Some miners involved in illegal mining are still trapped underground in Langlaagte, Johannesburg. They've been underground for the past 6 days and authorities have been accused of not coming to their rescue on time. Illegal mining, or Zama Zamas, have been a complicated problem for the government in this regulated sector. There have been issues of trespassing on private property, violence, and operating dangerous economic activity without appropriate licenses. Because of the widespread nature of this activity, especially in Gauteng and the Free State, some groups are appealing to the government to legalize this type of mining. And one such organization is ActionAid South Africa, and the Mining and Extractives Coordinator is Chris Rutledge, who joins us on the show to share with us his thoughts on this matter. Chris, pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much for having us.
On the program. And violence, as one of the issues that has been mentioned before, is one key feature of Zama Zama mining. And the authorities have been very much unhappy with that. And I suspect, to a large extent, members of the public who are saying that the authorities must strike down hard on this activity. It's actually been blamed even for the underground problem, people being trapped in Langlaagte, that it's because some violence broke out underground. Yeah.
Yes, Tim, it does appear to be a very complicated matter, but I do want to say that it's not a new phenomenon. It is something that has its history in the history of South Africa, 150 years of mining, and before that, our people have been mining for a long time. So it's not as if we are doing something new. I think what has been complicating matters is the way that we try to regulate our society. So one of the difficulties that we have is that our regulations mainly recognizes large-scale mining. Now that's a product of our history. Over 150 years, there's always been a preference for Anglo-American type operations, big operations that employ hundreds of thousands of miners at cheap rates and extracting the profits and taking it out of the country. And so we are left with that legacy where big corporations essentially are the only ones that get preference in the South African mining legislation. But now with 150 years of mining, we have something like more than 6,000 abandoned and derelict mines across the country. So this creates, this together with the big unemployment problem that we have up to 40% of our young eligible people unemployed. And so now we have these two competing problems. We have these open mines where there are still resources available, and we have this huge unemployment problem that comes together in the Zama Zama mining. And so that's kind of the two drivers that are driving this.
Here's one argument. I'm familiar with this one, where people have said, the key driver of this activity is actually the fact that the former operators of the mines abandoned them without filling them up and left them degrading the environment, and in any event that they are very dangerous to operate and they should be closed off, even for the people who are not involved in mining, that there shouldn't be access to those mines in the first instance.
Absolutely. So there is no doubt that of the 6,000 odd abandoned mines, that there are mines that are very, very dangerous. Not only for the miners who are going down, but for residential areas. We know of some cases where these mine tunnels that go underground are under residential areas. So if the Zama Zamas are going to explode the wrong pillar, they might just collapse the whole residential area. So we're sitting with a very dangerous situation, not only for those 30 to 40,000 miners who are going underground illegally, but also for communities. So it's a huge problem. We know that government has allocated this task of auditing the mines to determine which ones are dangerous, which ones are open, which needs to be closed, which can still be recovered. To the Council for Geological Sciences and Mintech. These are two government institutions. And what they've been telling us is that wherever they go in, they're finding a problem with, once they identify a mine, they close it off. The very next day, the Zama Zamas will be there and they'll open the mine again. But the problem here, Tim, is not that people are illegal, that they want to be illegal, that they want to break the law. The problem is unemployment. That's really
and I understand.
where we're starting
Sure.
from. And I like to make the comparison with the taxi industry. 20, 30, 40 years ago, the taxi industry was illegal. Government didn't want to allow the taxi industry to operate. But yet, because there was these economic drivers, people needed easy, cheap transport, the taxi industry grew. And as it grew, government realized we have to regulate this. And what do we have today? We have today an industry that employs over 600,000 people, who has spread the wealth amongst black population significantly. And so there is an example of a wealth creator, a wealth generator that has shared wealth across a wide range of society, and it hasn't led to monopolies. Now, this is what we're trying to say in the mining sector. If we allow people to organically mine with the help of government, Mintech and the Council for Geological Sciences, to go into areas that are safe and to provide them with the infrastructure that is safe, we could potentially create a whole new economy, a whole new way of, shall we say, BEE, if you want to, of sharing the wealth.
But now, Chris, how would the authorities, or how should they be going about this? Because there's another view that wherever they reside, where there's a lot of activity, the Zama Zamas cause trouble for the local communities, right? Because they rent the back rooms and so forth, or become a community on their own. And when they fight amongst each other, that violence tends to flare up in the specific communities that are affected. Having said that, you are suggesting that legalize this, empower the Zama Zamas. How should authorities be going about it? And whatever the proposal, why are the authorities not doing that then?
So our take on this is very simple. If we criminalize Zama Zamas, it's like criminalizing poverty. It's like saying to somebody, if you're in poverty, you're going to become a criminal because there's no way for you to earn a living. So we're saying that part of the problem is when you criminalize an activity like this, a fairly legitimate activity, the only things that these miners get charged with is things like trespassing, for example, or if they're found with gold, then they are charged with possession of minerals, which officially belongs to the state. So really these are minor infringements, and by criminalizing them, we drive them underground. When they're underground, nature doesn't like a vacuum. So what happens is criminal elements come in, they start to set up these value chains, and they essentially derive the profit. So these miners
end up working for somebody else.
In any case, but just illegally. And so what we're saying is, if this is happening, and the African Union admits that this problem is not going to go away, the United Nations admits this problem is not going to go away, the Chamber of Mines admits it's not going to go away. The world really is starting to recognize that this is a problem that's here to stay. So what we need to do is not to wish it away and say, I wish you weren't here, and if you are there, we're going to criminalize you. Instead of doing that, is say, let's regulate it so that we can ensure that we create economies for communities. If we do it in a way that empowers a community, for example, say, for example, in Rivoli now, in Langlaagte, if that community were to come together and say, okay, here's a mine that with the help of the Council for Geological Sciences, we could mine fairly profitably, and that money can be shared with the community, and we can help to develop our community, and the community is actively involved. Then we start to eliminate and marginalize these criminals, because now that becomes
the property of the community.
Absolutely.
In a way,
and an economy that can sustain
and they
them.
derive a benefit, and certain standards can be set, I can imagine.
That's correct.
Things like health standards, whatever, that safety and so forth.
So now we can start to deal with the problem. But it's like with anything, Tim. Even in the taxi industry, after many years of regulation, we still haven't got it right. So I'm not saying that we are going to, by doing this, create a silver bullet and all our problems will be resolved. But we are saying that it is an avenue towards building our economy in a way that we don't rely on foreign investment, in a way that we can sustain ourselves and build organic wealth.
Well, I understand where you're coming from, and the thinking around it. If one thinks of places such as Bekkersdal, Carltonville, very depressed areas where people are without employment, and majority of them, or a substantial number, have worked in the mines and now have got nothing to do. So,
that's right.
Yeah. But now, Give us a step-by-step, if you will, recommendation of what the authorities should and can do about this problem. Where should they start?
Well, I think first things first is let's get together and talk. So what we have been doing, we held a conference with artisanal miners, Zama Zama miners in March. We invited the Department of Mineral Resources, we invited the police, we invited Department of Labor, a wide range of stakeholders, academics, and civil society organizations. We said, let's get together and talk about this problem. Unfortunately, Department of Mineral Resources didn't attend, even though they said they would. The presidency didn't attend, the police didn't attend, and so forth. Nevertheless, we continue to work.
So,
we're working now.
What that tells me is that if effectively the government department, sorry for the interruption, was saying, we don't recognize this discussion of yours.
Correct.
This conference
This
of yours.
is the key problem,
Okay,
is that there is a lack of political will to understand this problem and to deal with it.
All right.
You saw the minister the other day, and he was basically saying, we've arrested 800 people, and he thinks that's a success. I think that's a disgrace. Actually, to criminalize people who are just trying to put food on the table is a problem. So we need to be having a lot more open discussions. So we're working with the University of Witwatersrand, and we've been having a range of seminars where we've invited government, the Council for Geosciences, Mintech. We've had different discussions. And our next step is to have a discussion, a workshop where we invite all the key stakeholders. We'll invite government again and try to work through how do we move towards regulating the sector, bringing about sustainable solutions that can add value to our economy. I mean, unofficial estimates is that this economy creates 6 billion rand. That's 6 billion rand going
6 billion rands.
to criminals.
Presumably.
Yeah, well, I mean the syndicates.
As they're defined, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Whereas that 6 billion rand plus its spin-off economic benefits for the community can be coming to communities who really, really need it.
Couple of facts before we conclude that I would like to understand, Chris, and hopefully will help us as ordinary members of the public to appreciate the nature of this problem or of this challenge.
Yeah.
How many people are involved in Zama Zama activity? Let's start there.
We don't know for certain in South Africa. The number ranges from the Chamber of Mines estimating 14,000 to other estimates that go up as high as 30 to 40,000.
All right. And you mentioned something about 6,000.
6 billion rands worth
6 billion rands worth.
That's the estimate from the Chamber of Mines on the 14,000 Zama Zamas.
Right.
We think that's very conservative.
And of course, there are 6,000 derelict
At least 6,000 derelict and abandoned mines.
Right. So that's basically what we're talking about, and the social issues that arise as a result of this activity, which would include violence, trespass, and what you call criminalization of this activity.
Yes.
So how far are we from a useful solution, you think, at this time?
I'm very positive. I think that COSATU has recently come out to say that they are in support of decriminalizing the miners. Like I said, United Nations, the African Union in its African mining vision actually holds our government to this vision of decriminalizing Zama Zama miners.
Okay.
So our government needs to actually get to grips with its own policies.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot of hope that with clear heads and sober conversations, we can reach a solution in which human rights become a lot more important than profits.
Thank you very much, Chris
Excellent.
Rutledge.
Thank you very much.
Much appreciated. He is Mining and Extractives Coordinator with ActionAid South Africa. And there you are. There are other views about Zama Zama mining here in South Africa. People like Chris, for instance, who believe that let's legalize this activity and then get the communities that surround these mines, these used mines, to become the beneficiaries and somehow help set the standards of safety, health, and other related matters. So we wonder what your views are. We would like to hear them, and please do so via Twitter @Tim Modise.